we say, well, Lord, when I'm better, I'll share my testimony. When my money's back in the bank account, I'll tell everyone that you're the provider. When my husband or wife comes back home, I'll talk about you're the redeemer of relationships. But God said to me, faith is not hindsight. Faith is proclaiming the mountaintop when you're lying face down naked in the valley. So I was a cheerleader at Florida State University. It was an awesome experience. I was part of the second largest college ministry in America at the time. We had 1,000 college students in our own service. Nice. I was on fire for God. I was in a traveling music group, just loving life. And it seemed like overnight, I went from the immortal teenager, healthy, passionate, I'd like to consider myself somewhat the life of the party, to symptoms of gut issues. I was at a youth camp where I was a counselor, the same camp I went to in high school in the summer, and I started to have stomach aches, and then I started to run to the bathroom, and I lost weight, had a fever, and that began a 2-year journey that saw me go from 6 foot, nearly 1 inch, 185 pounds as a healthy teenager, down to 104 pounds in a wheelchair, diagnosed with Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and 17 other illnesses, every infection known to man. And I remember being in a hospital bed, having doctors come in and out, poking me, prodding me, saying things like, well, we might be able to treat you, you'll need to be on medication, you might not be able to have children, putting me in this box. And I'm this teenager who was on fire for God. I lived for God as a teenager. I was very blessed to be in a great church with a great youth group and a great set of peers. And I'm thinking to myself, God promised that He had good plans for me to prosper my life, not to harm me, to give me a future and a hope. And now I'm being told by a man or men and women in lab coats about the limitations on the box I would be in. And it really started a journey that lasted 2 years. I visited 69 medical experts, conventional medicine, failed, all kinds of medications, natural medicine, traveling around the world to Mexico, doctors in England, Canada, all failed. And ultimately, I would say I was at death's door, but I think it was half cracked open. And I remember after my second hospitalization, when I went into the hospital at 104 pounds, when the nurse opened up my shirt, I could see my heart pounding out of it. My resting heart rate was over 250 beats per minute. Oh. My iron level was a 0, and I literally got rushed up to a room, and they were trying to give me an IV to rehydrate me, and nurse, doctor, phlebotomist, they couldn't get any blood return. And I remember lying in bed, and I heard a nurse who left the room. She was very emotional, and she said, this young man's not going to make it till tomorrow. And I can't explain adequately today what it feels like to be dying, but I describe it as hanging onto a cliff by my pinky and just ultimately realizing that I don't know that I can do this anymore. And here's the thought I had as I wasn't able to get this hydrating IV to just preserve my life. I remember thinking, Lord, I have had a great life. I was able to go on mission trips. I was able to minister to people and see them come to know the Lord. I had great friends and got to perform on stage and music groups. But I remember thinking, Lord, I'm ready to go. I've had a great life, but I never had a chance to be married and have a family. I was blessed to commit for that one woman that would come into my life, and I saved myself. And even at that point, I just was ready to go home and be with the Lord. And I closed my eyes for what I thought was going to be the last time. They couldn't get blood return. They couldn't hydrate me. And describing what that's like is really hard. But since I'm here, you understand I didn't die. I woke up the next day, and I wasn't better. They managed to get an IV, and after 4 hours, I had some water weight back. But I was in the game, right? I mean, so many times we need God to get us all the way there, or we don't think we're better. You know, I need my bank account to be full. I need my relationship to be complete. I need my kids to be exactly where I want them to be. I need my diagnosis to be reversed. But sometimes God just keeps us in the game. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear. And so I was in the hospital alive, got out of the hospital, coming off the medications. I always had challenges, hallucinated, crazy thoughts, all kinds of stuff, just miserable, but I was still alive. And I remember friends would call me. I'm 19 years old. My friends would call me and say, can I come visit you? And when you have Crohn's disease, what I was diagnosed with, it's an embarrassing disease. I mean, who wants to tell someone you're in the bathroom 30 times a day? And I looked like death. I was in a wheelchair. Anytime I left the house, nobody wanted to come towards me. They thought, God forbid, what if he has some disease I could catch, you know? And I had a friend who was persistent, and uninvited, she came over, and at the time, I was so weak and sick, I couldn't see straight enough to read the Bible. And so she said, can I read to you? And she came upon a verse that I had memorized, learned in Sunday school, read 1,000 times, but God spoke to me in a new way. And it said, Hebrews 11:1, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And this is funny, I'm just now remembering this because of the connection. I read a book during that time before my eyes got so bad called Combat Faith by Hal Lindsey. It's just now, wow. I've never even said this on the air when I tell the story, but I know you all have a long history. And it talked about faith. It talked about how faith comes by hearing the word of God. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. And faith without action or works is dead. Now here I am in bed in my parents' home being taken care of like an infant. I went to college, had to medically withdraw. I didn't expect to live with my parents again and be in this situation, this living hell, this prison that was my body. I couldn't escape from it. I couldn't sleep more than 45 minutes. I would play my favorite CD at the time. It was Stephen Curtis Chapman's, one of his early albums, and there was a song called Hiding Place. And as I would try to sleep, I'd play it on loop. I wanted to hide and get away from this prison, and every day was the same. Every minute was the same. There was no remission, and I just was absolutely miserable. But when my friend was reading to me and I was understanding this faith message, God said that I had to have faith. He told me, have faith. And I was arguing with the Lord, what can I do? I'm sick, I can barely walk. There were times when I would walk to the bathroom and my mom or dad would find me face down. I would black out due to the extreme anemia, glasses broken, I was just at the epitome of brokenness, nothing. I would read Psalms in the 40s and feel like David, I'm poured out like water, my bones are broken. And here it was God telling me to have faith. And I argued with him, well, what can I do? Because we say, well, Lord, when I'm better, I'll share my testimony. Right. When my money's back in the bank account, I'll tell everyone that you're the provider. When my husband or wife comes back home, I'll talk about you're the redeemer of relationships. But God said to me, faith is not hindsight. Faith is proclaiming the mountaintop when you're lying face down naked in the valley. Wow. Yeah. Now I know this is a program we're going to talk about health, but it's really about faith. And I knew what God wanted me to do. There was a pantry or a closet that was between the room I stayed in and the bathroom, and I'd walked that path before 7 steps. And I'd fainted many times. But this time I took those steps and I started yelling for my mom. I said, Mom. And she said, what is it? Thinking something was wrong. I said, I need you to take my picture. I was in my boxers and nothing else. My skin was sort of dark because I couldn't shower very often because I couldn't stand up long enough. I had an ugly looking beard, not because it was fashionable, but because if I couldn't lose any blood, so I couldn't cut myself. You don't think about these things, right? My mom said, Jordan, I don't want to take your picture. It breaks my heart to look at you. Can't we wait till you're better? And I said, Mom, you need to take this picture. She said, why do you insist? And I said, Mom, you need to take this picture because the world's not going to believe what God's about to do in my life.
Thank you, Lord. Wow.
And I sat on a similar set to this 15 years ago, sharing this same story in a little bit of a different way. The first time I appeared on Praise out of the Atlanta studio, and I remember today getting letters. This was back then when people wrote letters, email was just starting up, and people would say, Jordan, I love your book. We were talking about my Maker's Diet book. I love your message, but you gave me hope, because if you could get well, you're worse than me, or your sickness, then I can get well. And so here I am. My mom snaps a picture, and I can't explain how valuable that was to me. That instant, because this was before digital photos, that has changed my entire life. Now, I didn't go to sleep that night and wake up better. It wasn't an instantaneous healing, but months later, I met a man who told me that if I will follow a health plan based on the Bible, if I will live it, eat it, drink it, and breathe it, I will be well. And he told me that if I will leave South Florida and stay with him in San Diego, in 3 months I'll be working out on the beach. And I can't explain why, but I believed. Faith turned into hope, and I said to my mom and dad, I gotta go. And they said, can you make the trip? You're in a wheelchair, thousands of miles. And I looked at my mom and dad and I said, I am going there physically sick, but I'm gonna return well.
At TBN, our mission is to use every available means to reach as many individuals and families as possible with the life-changing gospel of Jesus Christ.
Thank you for helping make the gospel of grace go around the world.
Without you, we couldn't do it. God bless you.